After getting back into GT7 yesterday for a video and playing a lot of F1 23, the official licensed game, on PS5, it got me thinking, why do we not have an F1 licensed game in VR on console? Now, this then prompted me to think, why don't we have any of the EA racing games in VR on console, and why are they on PC? Because if you weren't aware, the VR sim racing situation on PC is a lot more wide in its variety. We might have GT7 on PSVR2 that is, in my opinion, one of the best sim racing games for VR ever in terms of how well it performs, the amount of cars, the amount of tracks, and the pure fidelity of it, and the accessibility of just plug and play. But we don't have the EA games at all. You know, we can't jump into BeamNG and see some real destruction. We can't jump into F1 and race with the actual F1 drivers in the actual cars, in the versions of the tracks that are on those games, and we can't go through serious rally stages like we can on PC VR. But the point of this video is to talk about, is there a way to change that? Could we get those games on PSVR2? Why would we even want those games on PSVR2? And can we look at the past to see if anything like this has happened before? And what is the state of EA's VR division? Well, let's talk about it, starting with F1 as a baseline. Now the F1 games are yearly releases, and it seems that the VR modes are kind of just the same thing year and year. Obviously, there's a bit of work to get it up and running on each game, but there doesn't seem to be too much of a change or optimization for how the VR mode works year upon year. But I hear that it does work fairly well with some performance dips because it's not the most optimized. But if you want to play F1 23 on a VR headset on PC or the upcoming 24, you can. Move over to PSVR2 and PS5 and you can play the F1 games on PS4 or PS5, but there's no option for VR. The reason for this, I'm assuming, is because the VR division in EA and Codemasters is so small that they just look at PC VR as an option. It's not really a feature they plaster all over the game box or anything. When you buy it on the Steam page, it doesn't say experience these races in VR, and tote it is a big feature, but it is an accessibility option if you want to immerse yourself further into the game. And that's kind of what they see it as, I think. Whereas on PSVR2, that would be quite a big feature and would require a lot more work, I think, to get it up and running on the PS5 architecture with, you know, the eye tracking enabled, with the headset haptics and with everything like that. It would be a lot more substantial work to get it up and running, which I think is the reason why they haven't really invested into that. Now, if we look at EA's WRC, the rally game that's coming out, there's a lot more of a push for that. They've given out keys to VR creators to get their coverage on it, to actually get the word out that there's a brand new VR mode for the game, and they're marketing it as a VR mode, as an extra piece of content. Even though I think the full game is playable in VR, they're marketing it as that, which is very different to the F1 situation where it just kind of is tacked on with the game. You can do it if you want. But this VR mode for WRC is being pushed a lot more, and that makes me a little bit hopeful that perhaps we could get that ported to PSVR2. But the situation there is that they seem to be a lot more invested into WRC, and historically we've seen that across multiple headsets. If we flash back to PSVR, the original, we had Dirt Rally on PSVR 1, and it was great. A lot of work was put into making it look good, making it run well, and also putting other integrations into it. There was also a co-op mode where you could hand the controller to somebody else while you were racing and they could give the callouts to you. That is the extra mile in terms of putting in work to make a VR port good. And I mean, the last time we saw that was years and years ago with that port to PSVR, but that does show that perhaps if some of the leadership is still there in the company, and say if Codemasters wanted to, they could port it over to PSVR 2. Now, out of these two games, which one would I want the most? Probably F1 because of my preferences, but I do understand that a lot of people want WRC because we can sort of emulate F1 races in GT7. I've done that in a couple of videos on the channel, even though it isn't quite the F1 speeds and doesn't have the F1 cars. We can do Super Formula and it feels fairly similar, but the rally stages for GT7 aren't quite there compared to, say, going around Sweet Lamb on WRC, which has the exact layout and they're quite long courses. People do want that, and I would completely agree with bringing those over to PSVR 2, and I'd understand why people would want that. Me particularly though, I'd love to see the actual F1 cars and the F1 models in VR on PSVR 2, and with the eye tracking it could look pretty great. And if EA wanted to, they could definitely get a couple more sales out of people for jumping on the F1 bandwagon or WRC bandwagon. because of the PSVR2 support. But is there anything we can really do to make that happen? Well, you can at them on any social media platform again and again and again. If they do community feedback sessions, push PSVR2 is the thing that we want. I've been doing that on a couple of the F1 posts where they've been talking about the new F1 24 game coming to PS5. I've been pushing for PSVR2 support, and maybe one of these days, if they see that, they will, latch onto it and think that it's a good idea. If they see that the sales numbers could be increased on the platform, definitely. Out of the two, though, realistically, I do see WRC being the one to get PSVR2 support if they do, because they seem to be more invested into that than F1. I'm assuming the F1 sales are good enough where they don't have to add this extra feature, another unique selling point. They don't really need it. F1's massive and people are going to buy the game anyway. But with WRC, maybe that just extra feature of a fully fledged VR mode where you can play the game in VR and it looks great and feels great, that's enough to bring people on board. So maybe that's the reason why WRC is getting a bit of extra treatment for virtual reality, and hopefully in the future we could see that come to PSVR 2. And if it does well, we could see F1 as well. Anyway, those are my thoughts on WRC and F1, their VR ports, and whether or not we could see them come to PSVR 2. Are there any other racing games you'd love to see over on the platform? Doesn't matter how unrealistic your expectations may be, put them in the comments below, I'd love to hear them. Thank you all for watching and tuning in. If you didn't catch yesterday's video when we're on GT7, go take a look. It was a load of fun and a different style of GT7 video to what I usually do. So thank you all for watching. Thank you to our patrons, Luke Bentley, Phil Irving, Haseet Mirza, Ace Gamer, and Hippie Pickle. Your guys' donations keep the channel going day to day and week after week, and I appreciate you. If you want to join the Patreon or YouTube membership or the Discord, the links are in the description below as always. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.